morning, dear people of the internet, and welcome to the ultimate reasoning of why alpha males are absolutely ridiculous. Don't worry, I don't actually think they're aliens, as the title probably says. This will be a comparison between the Star Trek alien species Ferengi and the human species alpha male. Or the part of human species alpha male. You get what I mean. I think there are a lot of things that we can compare between these two and that are the same. And don't worry if you don't know anything about Star Trek, I will explain any necessary information. After that, we'll look at some alpha male article and see what alpha males actually are, because that is very vague. We need some rules to compare the two, you know? So we're going to do that today, and in the end I will explain to you why it is ridiculous, and the Ferengi will help us with that a lot, so that's very nice. Before we get started though, I have this very delusional plan of this channel helping me through college and after that, which would be very nice and very helpful and very great, and then I can also make these videos after college and it will be very nice and wonderful. You can help me with that for free by subscribing and watching my videos, so if you can do that, I would absolutely love that, and thank you for that. Now let's get started. I will first explain who the Ferengi are and what they're doing and why they are relevant to this. And this will contain spoilers for the Star Trek show Deep Space Nine, but I think that's okay because it ended airing in 1999 and you have had plenty of time for watching it, and I won't spoil the entire show. I would still recommend that you watch it because it's wonderful, but I will tell you spoilers mostly at the end of this video, but also a little bit right now. Ferengi are a species from the planet Ferenginar. They look like little trolls with gigantic earlobes. The earlobes are very important because they are sort of their private parts, and the bigger the earlobes, the better, according to the Ferengi. There is one thing that is absolutely the most important thing for any Ferengi, and that is profit. They will do anything for money, including stealing and scheming and fraud and all that kind of stuff, and they don't have any religion or something, but they live by a book that's called The Rules of Acquisition. There are 289 rules of acquisition as of now because they keep adding them, and these rules are very sacred to them. I will read you a few of them so you can get an idea. Rule number 1 is once you have their money, never give it back. Rule number 10 is greed is eternal, and rule number 33 is it never hurts to suck up to the boss. So those are a few examples of rules of acquisition. I will be mentioning these rules of acquisition, not these specific ones, but the rules of acquisition. I will be referring to them a lot through this video because they give us a pretty good idea of who the Ferengi are and how they deal with stuff, and that's important. Another important thing is that the Ferengi absolutely do not believe in gender equality. Ferengi women are not allowed to make profit, which is the most important thing to Ferengi. They are not allowed to travel without a man present, and they are not even allowed to wear any clothes. And they are also not allowed to read. The role of the Ferengi woman is mainly care for the male children by chewing their food before they eat it. Yes, they are like birds in that way, even though they don't even look like birds, but who cares? And they also have the role of teaching their children, mainly the male children, the rules of acquisition. And as I just said, Ferengi women were not allowed to read, so they couldn't read, so they had to know all the rules of acquisition by mind. And that's not a requirement for being a good male Ferengi, although it's kind of expected. It makes you a better Ferengi man if you do, but the woman should know them because they are supposed to teach them to the children. Marriage does exist on Ferenginar, but it's a contract between the groom and the father of the bride, so the woman is not actually involved in the process. It's a contract, just like everything else with the Ferengi. And when a Ferengi woman gets a child, or when a Ferengi man gets a child, because that's actually how that works, the man is basically renting the body, the woman's body, from her father, even though they are married, to get the child. And also, the Ferengi refer to their women as females. Where have we heard that before? Yes, any alpha male or incest on the planet is also referring to women as females. Female. Because that's dehumanizing to women. So that actually works by keeping this kind of mindset alive that women are worth less by referring to them as females instead of women, which is a word that has more dignity. Like they're animals, kind of. A lot of alien species in Star Trek are supposed to represent a specific part of humans to kind of amplify that and to kind of be a parody on a kind of stereotype or a trait that humans have or a world that we can live in the future maybe. And the Ferengi are definitely part of that. The Ferengi are an amplification of the capitalist society that we live in and the not equality that we have. It's kind of amplifying that aspect of humans, and that's why they made the Ferengi in the show. Now, when you watch Star Trek, or when I watch Star Trek, I don't desire desire to live in that society. Not even as a man, because it wouldn't feel very nice to me, even if I were a man in that society, because everything's about money and the power that comes with having money and not anything else. Like, it's the most important thing, and it's supposed to be the most important thing for everyone, and that's not really enjoyable. So I would think that if you watch that, you're like, oh, it's good that we are not like that, or we don't want to be like that. And I know that there are a lot of countries on Earth where it sadly is kind of like that, but then more grim, I would say, because the Ferengi are supposed to be funny, and they kind of are. But that's also sad when you think about that. Because there are countries on Earth that kind of work like that. But then also you would assume that if you don't live in a country like that, you'd be like, oh, luckily I don't live in a world that is similar to the Ferengi world. So, yay. But then we have alpha males. I mostly know about alpha males from podcast clips like these.
If you're the alpha, you don't have to announce you're the alpha.
Right.
You just show up as the alpha.
Yeah.
And the alpha, by the way, in every tribe, from animals to humans, is usually the person who's most quiet. He's observing. He's looking to protect. He's looking to serve. He's looking to provide. Like, it's a big responsibility to be alpha.
This podcast clip also raises the first issue we have in comparing the Ferengi to alpha males. We need to know what an alpha male actually is. And for scientific purposes, that means that we need someone to announce that they are an alpha, and according to this podcast clips, they don't really do that. Mostly on TikTok, when you want to find answers to that question, you get AI wolf pictures with text on them explaining some rules to being an alpha, and that's not really straight to the point. Like, it's one account with like 100 million clips like these or slides like these, whatever. That's not really telling us anything. So I'm going to read you an article that I found that was kind of high up on Google or Ecosia, whatever, and explains it pretty well in a way that aligns with my ideas and the ideas that TikTok gave me about this. And it's written by someone who wants men to be powerful or something. So I think that's a pretty close thing to what the alpha male actually is that we can read together. Before we do that, there are 2 rules of acquisition that align with the podcast clip we just saw already. The first one is Rule 168, whisper your way to success, aka don't announce who you are or what you're doing, just do the thing kind of not so loud, kind of quietly, and then you will get there. And Rule 190, hear all, trust nothing. Maybe alpha men don't necessarily do this to gain information about opportunities to make profit, but they do it for a sort of personal gain anyhow, just like a Ferengi, because money is personal gain on Ferenginar, as we know now. And the tactic is the same. Use your ears and don't tell anyone who you are or what you want. Maybe this article can tell us what an alpha male actually is. It is called What is an Alpha Male? 10 Traits, Examples, and How to Be One. The term alpha male is commonly used to describe a man who is confident, ambitious, dominant, and socially powerful. Research on status and dominance suggests that men who achieve higher social status tend to earn more, attract more partners, and often enjoy better health and well-being. In this guide, you will learn the alpha male meaning, the 10 core traits, real-life examples, and the hidden weaknesses of alpha personalities. Technically, an alpha is the highest-ranking individual within a social hierarchy in animal behavior research. When applied to humans in everyday language, it usually refers to a man who is dominant, high status, ambitious, confident, and often successful. In scientific literature, similar traits are studied under the constructs such as dominance, status attainment, leadership, and agency. Throughout this article, we use alpha male as a shorthand for men who achieve high social status and influence, while grounding the analysis in research on status and dominance. There are 2 subcomponents of an alpha male, the physical and the psychological. These 2 components form 2 archetypal subcategories. Chats look most like alpha males, and schemers think more like alpha males and reach the top. Right, chats and schemers. I don't think I've ever met someone who prefers or desires to be referred to as a chat or a schemer, especially a schemer, since that more often than not involves illegal activity, so that's kind of weird, but okay. Speaking of scheming, the Ferengi are professional schemers. There's no rule of acquisition that actually mentions that word, but the rule, a good lie is easier to believe than the truth, comes pretty close. I would say that the Ferengi don't necessarily desire to be a chat. They are kind of the furthest thing away from a typical gym bro. However, they are a different species, and presumably people from different species are attracted to different things. I've already mentioned their earlobes, And the size of their earlobes is very important because it's also sort of their most attractive feature, supposedly. Having big earlobes also comes with a status because the Ferengi often say he has the lobes for business, meaning that he has big earlobes and is good at business. So the Ferengi also have a connection between power and their body, just like the alpha male. Men with alpha male traits seek and get power and responsibility, tend to rise through the social and organizational ranks, and tend to become leaders of men. Although every hierarchy differs, these are the most common traits of alpha males. First, we have high status. The upward ascension to the top is the main defining trait of an alpha male. All other traits only serve to facilitate the acquisition of status and power. It's the most important trait of them all because the standard definition of an alpha male is being at the top of the power hierarchy. And between two men only, the alpha male is simply the higher power person between the two. The alpha type instead is the man who is most likely to gain status. As simple as that. Everything else are personal opinions, conjectures, hot air, and noise. I would say that having a chance to be at the top or something has a lot to do with privileges that you already have. Like if your family has money, you can go to college. Or if you're white, you have more chance at anything in life. Let's be real, especially in the northern hemisphere of the world, especially in Europe and in North America. So it has a lot to do with that. It also has a lot to do with everyone else's opinion. It's proposed here like it is some objective thing, but if someone walks into a room and pretends to be an alpha, I don't look up to that person. I would be very annoyed more than anything. So it's more a personal opinion and privileges than anything else, according to my opinion. The second rule or trait here is the number one trait that facilitates alpha male status. So this is the number one trait, even though the previous was the number one trait, but this trait is the one that facilitates the previous one, so it's the number one trait. Yes, are we still following? Anyways, it is ambition. Drive is the only necessary trait to become an alpha male. One may be the perfect leader or greatest chat, but if he isn't driving to lead, he will never be the top dog. I would argue that being a man, and probably a cis man, is also necessary to be an alpha male. On the other hand, one can be unconfident, sloppy, or short and unattractive, but if he's extremely driven to win and acquire power, chances are he will find a way. This reminds me of the ninth rule of acquisition. Opportunity plus instinct equals profit, which means that having instinct to know where the opportunities are and jumping on every opportunity is very important to a Ferengi. And I would call that ambition. The third trait is high power behavior. Here's a good general rule to become an alpha male. To become an alpha male, act like an alpha male. Some of the many traits and skills of high power behavior include leadership and all subcomponents, assertiveness and speaking up early and confidently, frame control. There's a 3.2 here. High power body language. The quintessential smooth alpha steals the show with a flying kiss that's charming, cool, and high power at the same time. There's a gif of a man with a kiss to the camera. Alpha males tend to move and act purposefully, slowly, and low energy. There's also a 3.3. No low power body language, including hunched over, making yourself smaller, or too high energy, and more that it doesn't say. There's a 3.4 even. It says social power and dominance to gain status and respect. Store explains in the status game, as humans evolved, our game of status also evolved from mostly physical to mostly verbal and sub-communication. The general rule of that power game is, the more you let others one-up you and disempower you, the more status you lose, and the more you stay stuck at the bottom. Conversely, the better you check power moves, defend yourself, and counterattack, the more status and respect you acquire. So basically, treat life like it's a game of boxing, for example. When someone pulls a power move, they are betting against you. They bet that if they're above you, either more dominant if the move is direct or more powerful, or more power competent if it's more covert. To borrow from pickup artist terminology, you can see a power move as a social shit test. If you let it slip, miss it, or submit, you confirm that you're below them and lose status. But if you can check it and turn it around into a win, you turn a loss into a win and a status boost. So treat life like it is a game or a sports game, and you'll be all good, because life works like a game and everyone is always actively trying to overpower you. I don't think so. I don't agree. I'm not sure if that's just my social bubble, but I'm pretty sure my friends are not doing that, or anyone around me, because that's just not how life works. Apparently some people work like that, but that just sounds like too much effort. But okay, I love this act like the person you want to be kind of thing, like genuinely. fake it till you make it, you know? But it's still kind of delusional, and I am very delusional. I have a lot of plans that require me to be delusional, and that's great. I have nothing against it, except that you have to admit to yourself that they are delusional, because otherwise you will just fail them, mostly because you're just in too deep at some point, and that's not great for any life plans. But it is delusional, and that's okay, but you have to admit to yourself that it is delusional, and the fake it till you make it being an alpha male is kind of too. It's a performance. Surprisingly enough, even a Ferengi would see right through this. Rule of acquisition number 47 says, don't trust a man who wears a better suit than you are. I would interpret it as, don't trust someone who is trying to show that they are better than you. I am kind of with the Ferengi on this one. I don't find people who pretend that they're just powerful and think that they are overpowering everyone with playing games and whatever. I don't find that really trustful behavior. So I'm with the Ferengi on this one. Trait number 4 is high power mindsets. The mind is the backbone of the alpha male type. High power thinking includes positive associations with power. Power is good, and I want more of it. Entitlement, yes, because most people love entitled people. Anyways, I deserve power. Outer confidence, I can get power. And inner confidence, I am a high power alpha. Importantly, you can never acquire alpha male self-confidence if you remain an eternal learner of mediocre teachers. Teachers more than learners. The pupil is never an alpha. The rule of an alpha male mindset is you will always have a beta male mindset until you're learning how to be an alpha, because the learner is inherently lower power than the teacher. Simply accepting a teacher means that in some shape or form you submit and accept to be below someone else. Of course, always balance. You must learn in the beginning and never stop learning. Never stop learning. However, always remember, never be an eternal pupil. That's the exact opposite. Being a pupil equals you're learning from someone. Never stop learning means be a pupil in a kind of way. So that's not how life works. It's a paradox. Learn as an equal, especially in the mindset, never elect someone as above you. Keep in mind the end goal. Eventually, you want to become a de facto alpha male and think of yourself as an alpha male. Never elect anyone as the judge of your alphaness status. So fake it till you make it, and you make it by thinking it yourself, basically. There's a 4.3 even here. Pick teachers who will make way for your future alpha. Remember the power dynamics of teachers. Teachers have a vested interest in keeping you a pupil. And watch out for dark triad teachers if you prefer to be an honorable man. If you learn from these guys, you will more likely be a limited success asshole. The solution to being not an eternal pupil without stopping to learn: enlightened narcissism. You can both learn and learn as a high-power student. Rather than fully submitting yourself to dubious teachers, start learning to also trust yourself a bit more. Then they have a link, and it says making of the Übermensch. Now, the Übermensch was a theory by psychologist and philosopher Freud, which you might have heard of or might know as the theory behind what happened in Germany and Europe in the 1940s. Yes, great thing to want to be or something. I also don't think that desiring to be a DSM-5 diagnosis, which narcissism is, by the way, is a great thing to desire. And it's also not healthy when you call it enlightened. That does not make it messy. That's just narcissism times 2, I think. I'm not sure if the Ferengi are necessarily a narcissist species. I don't feel qualified to diagnose that, because I'm only a simple comic designer, YouTube video maker, and musicologist, so I don't know anything about that. But I would definitely call them self-centered, especially because of rule of acquisition 21. Never place a friendship above profit. The 5th trait of an alpha male is strategic intelligence. As a rule of thumb, social strategists beat strongmen in the race to the alpha male role. Even in chimps, alpha males are seldom the biggest, most aggressive, or highest testosterone, because you can be high testosterone. Cooperation is key for social rank, and studies show that smart coalition managers outrank and outreproduce the less socially skilled chimps. And if that is true in chimps, as Ridley points out, it's even truer in humans. Yes, great logic. This reminds me of Rule of Acquisition 211. Employees are the rungs on the ladder of success. Don't hesitate to step on them. I like that the Ferengi seem to be more honest about this than the alpha males. The 6th trait of the alpha male is goal focus. Typical alpha male traits facilitate goal achievement. They include risk appetite, high demands and expectations, both of himself and others. Note for female readers: being in a relationship with an alpha can be challenging since they are demanding. Courage to do what needs to be done, sometimes even bravery, competitiveness and drive to win, goal orientation and mission focus, not wasting time on side issues, emotional steadfastness without wild mood swings. Note to female readers, relationships can be challenging with alphas who have little patience for emotional swings, aka alphas are a red flag for women. Emotional self-reliance with internally granted self-esteem and confidence. People and events have little control over the alpha emotional states. Results over feelings. Pride in yourself, your work, your values, your background, your team, etc. etc. So I want to add here that a lot of people who call themselves alpha males also seem to be conservative Christians. Not all of them, by far not, but some of them, a lot of them. Pride is also a cardinal sin. So that is going great, I think. Anyways, decisiveness and bias for action. With little time for endless talk and purely theoretical, focus on what is possible, avoid daydreaming and castles in the skies. Of course, mind the law of balance. Any good trait can be taken to a self-defeating extreme. Like, disregarding your feelings. I feel like that is an extreme period. Anyways, extreme risk appetite, for example, turns into ineffective recklessness and you'd struggle to lead any high-performing group. Do we really need to turn to the rules of acquisition to see that Ferengi have high drives to get money? I mean, we will. But first I want to ask you a question. Can a person be really happy if all they do is chase goals? Because I personally find daydreaming extremely fun. I love doing that. I think the rule of acquisition, a man is only worth the sum of his possessions, fit this quite well, and it kind of made me sad. Luckily, it's only about an alien species that is fictional, right? Trait number 7 is competence. When you become a master, you've already reached the top. You outcompeted countless others in the same field, and men respect that. Becoming a master also subcommunicates many great alpha-like qualities such as grit and perseverance, staying power, dedication, and, of course, drive, willpower, and ambition. You may even gain even more status points if you master a typically masculine profession or hobby. Modern societies handsomely reward competence/mastery. It's one of those reasons why, quote, modern geeks can do great in life. You can be competent without being on the top of the pyramid. That's not what competent means. And being on the top of the pyramid doesn't necessarily mean that you're competent. I think we have a lot of examples like that in the world right now, especially on the top of politics right now, of people who are on the top and not very competent for their job. Faking it till you make it also really does not align with this point, and also not with being competent, but this does align with the rule of acquisition 263. Never allow your work to tarnish your lust for latinum. Latinum is the currency that Ferengi use, by the way, gold-plated latinum specifically, aka seem competent and not doubtful. Maybe this does align with the fake it till you make it point after all. Trait number 8 is masculinity. Alpha male status is a game of status among men. And masculinity is important because it helps earn respect from men. On the opposite, effeminate men struggle to gain male respect. In our day and age, alpha male masculinity overlaps with, quote, conservative values and gender roles. Hence, just to be on the safe side, point 8.2, avoidance of anything that feels not very manly. The list is endless, but some examples: endless relationship talks, gossiping, drama, stay-at-home daddying. To capture the concept in a meme, I will put the meme on the screen, of course. And it says, albeit a for fun meme, it's not fully baseless. More conservative alpha males don't do housework. And on the left it says Gen Z soy boy, on the right it says old school alpha. I know I look sort of like a Gen Z soy boy, if anything, or maybe I am one, because I think that soy is very powerful. That has nothing to do with that, but I do think that, and maybe it has something to do with that. I think it has a lot to do with the myth that soy makes you have more estrogen and therefore more feminine, and that's not how that works, but okay. But I do think that doing housework can be very powerful, and I think refusing to do that is giving weak child. There are plenty of valid reasons to not keep up with your housework. For example, because of illness or because of a disability. That's very valid. And to be clear, those things don't make you a weak person, but in the broader context of society, it often feels like people think that makes a person weaker. Because of that, I would assume that alpha males don't want to be in that list of people. But apparently I'm wrong. I think that refusing to do housework as an alpha male actually makes you weak, unlike the disabled and sick people that cannot do housework, because those people actually desire to do their housework, but they simply can't, and that can be very frustrating, and I know that from experience. So I think alpha males are the few steps below them in terms of weakness, maybe even a lot of steps below them. And doing housework is actually part of taking care of yourself, of taking care of your health, because having a nice place to live in is very nice for your health and your mental health especially. Unlike alpha males, Ferengi do actually care a little bit about their health. Rule of acquisition 23 says, nothing is more important than your health. except for money. I know that it sometimes seems like alpha males do care about their health, but this does not include living spaces, apparently. Trait number 9 says pursuit of power and personal success. Alpha males tend to be more on the right of the political spectrum. Studies link testosterone supplementation to a shift to the political right for weakly affiliated Democrats. However, hormones are only part of it. Being an alpha male is about self-advancement. It's antithetical to left-wing ideals such as equality, redistribution, and collectivism. And it's closer to right-wing values such as competition, individual success, private property, and the ideal of a self-made man. So alpha males tend to prefer lower taxation over socialist redistribution, believe it's fair for the rich and powerful to be rich and powerful, believe it's fair for the destitute to be destitute because it's up to them to advance instead of scrounging and leeching off, reject left-leaning and woke trends. This just says that you cannot be left-wing and alpha at the same time without actually explaining why. Because mostly it says something about woke trends and redistribution of, I assume, wealth. I can assure you that most left-leaning people don't want everyone to hand in their money to the government for them to distribute it equally, because that is not sensible at all, especially in the world we live in, and that's not how money works. But that's besides the point. Anyhow, I will actually explain why a right-wing political approach is helpful for alpha male ideas. A capitalist right-wing economical system rewards money and power, and a right-wing social system gives a man, especially a white man, way more access to this power by making it harder to impossible for women, people that are not white, disabled people, etc., to participate in this. So it's basically knock out all your enemies and you're good to go. Or having less enemies is better, kind of like that. So essentially it's winning by not allowing others to compete. And this kind of power would in theory also be less valuable in a left-wing political system, whether it's economical or socially or both. The Ferengi do this too, simply by not allowing women to participate in society, basically. Because if half of the population is not allowed to do something, it becomes a lot easier for the people who are allowed to do the thing to do the thing. Trait 10 is alpha looks. Physicality matters, both in Sims and still in humans as well. Often it's not even larger men who turn size into an advantage. Instead, because of men's natural reference for size, smaller men self-inflict all the damage by making way and quitting the race before even starting. Same goes for voice, birds, and penis size. So if you're small, you're a quitter. I don't really understand this sentence, but the bigger the better. The same goes for the Ferengi earlobes, as I've told you, but there's no rule of acquisition about that. This article promises 10 traits that an alpha male supposedly has. That's already a lot, but it's not enough. We get a bonus trait. It's called prestige, and it's accompanied by a picture of Yoda for some reason. I don't remember a lot about Star Wars, but I wouldn't call Yoda an alpha male. But it says here it's because of his wisdom. I don't really recall that Yoda was a schemer, so he must be a Chad. I am sure that's not what they meant, but that's what I'm making of this, because I don't know what else to make of it. It reads, psychology research has long recognized two different paths to both social power and status-based attraction. Dominance, or acquiring power with more forceful approaches, win-lose, or prestige, or acquiring power because willing followers admire a man's knowledge, abilities, skills, achievements, wisdom, character, etc., and elect him as a higher status and or alpha male, which is not in line with the fake it till you make it part, which is essentially self-appointing you as the alpha, so I don't know why this is here. Anyways, how does prestige work? Well, mastery/competence is part of prestige, so we've already seen an example, but it runs deeper to include character, achievements, life experiences, and wisdom. Let's explain with a real-life example. The author's older nephew is very close to a typical alpha. He's taller, larger, more muscular, more naturally dominant, and enjoys fat, easy sexual success. It's weird to write that about your nephew, by the way. Still, when he and the author meet, there's no doubt as to who is the alpha. The nephew willingly raises the author above him because the author is prestigious in his eyes. The author earns credibility and respect with choices, experiences, and actions, making the world his oyster. And he proves the usefulness of that experience and wisdom with advice that works in the nephew's life. And you can beat that first-hand evidence. Although the author physically looks up to his nephew, the nephew shared to look up to him, to feel green and unaccomplished when together, and wrote to one day hope to be at the same level. That is prestige, and it's quite powerful. Weird way to flex your own ego, by the way. I feel like this just means try to be older than the people that you try to dominate. They talk about life experience, and sometimes a younger person has more life experience, that is true, but mostly that just happens with age. This situation happens when there is an age gap and that the older person has just done things in their life, that has accomplished things. The younger the person, the more prestigious that may seem, and the more they will look up to them. That's not really being an alpha. The Ferengi are more about earning their profits and therefore respect, and not about being older. I feel like this prestige thing is just a weird way to say that you get more power when you're older, and they don't actually want to admit that. It does not end here though, because even though we were just promised 10 things and we got 1 bonus point, there are also other helpful traits. I guess that being short and to the point was not in the skill list of this author, and also living up to expectations, I guess, because he just gives us bonus things and it goes to 11. Like, if you promise 10 things, because people don't like reading very lengthy articles most of the times, you are not giving 13. Be to the point, because I feel like this list could have been a half as short and still said the same thing. But okay. Point 11. Rationality and critical thinking. Yes, the mind also matters. Power intelligence is most important, but these also help a lot. Rationality, both effective and masculine. Healthy skepticism and cynicism, since gullible, I'm not saying that word, aren't very credible leaders. I'm not saying that word because it has a bad history and I don't like that. And logic. But this entire article has not shown any critical thinking or logic. So much of the article doesn't make any sense, but I do think this aligns most with Rule of Acquisition 59. Free advice is seldom cheap, meaning that using your brain can help you a lot, and also that people who give free advice mostly give it to gain something themselves and not to actually help other people. Point 12 is dating and relationship skills and power. Mike Tyson is the ultimate chat, and still he was controlled, manipulated, and swindled in his first relationship. So develop your power intelligence, because despite brawn and natural alphaness, you can still be a big loser. And you can hardly earn alpha male respect and status if your partner controls you. An all-around alpha male leads the outside world and at home. I just cringe at this. Of course, you should control your home so it can be a nice living environment by doing your chores, for example. But you should not want to be controlling another person. That's something different, and that's kind of cringe. It's just very unnecessary and very unhealthy. I think that having one control freak in relationships, which kind of sounds like this, is an automatic red flag and an automatic unhealthy relationship, especially if they actively try to control, because you can have some controlling tendencies, but you can work on them, but not invoke them. Of course, the Ferengi are the final boss of control freaks in relationships, because they don't allow women to do anything, so I don't need to get into that, I think. And the last one, effectiveness. Competent alphas are effective men. As the Godfather says when planning his next move, I spent my life trying to not be careless. Yes, take advice from the Godfather. That's helpful. I've not seen that movie, but it does not sound like it's the best advice giver for real life stuff. Women and children can be careless, but not men. Yep, at least not effective men. There's more in this article, but I think it's nice to end it here at the base traits. 10 of them, 13 of them, 14 because we had the bonus trait, and also 2 point something traits. Anyways, productivity is manly, of course. Fun things are for women and children, and I would also like to add to the women and children list people who don't desire to have a burnout. This also goes for the Ferengi. Rule of Acquisition 103 is sleep can interfere with ... and I assume that the person who said that fell asleep while saying that, so we don't have the rest of the sentence, but it probably is sleep can interfere with profit making or something. I think we have a pretty clear idea of what an alpha male is now, for how far that is possible. There is one big difference between an alpha male and a Ferengi. Alpha males want power and Ferengi want money. However, that's not actually a very big difference, because we live in a world where money means that you have more power. And in the Ferengi world, it means that when you have money, you also have more power, so they are more similar than you might think. Since the Ferengi basically lived in a world of alpha males, I need to tell you how that worked out for them. As you know, hopefully, women have full lives. They have ambitions, goals, want to do things. They're full-fleshed humans. I don't think that I need to explain that to you. And the same goes for female Ferengis. They are also a full-fledged Ferengi and not a pet or a female or an animal. They're also a full-fledged Ferengi person. So it only makes sense that they started protesting at a certain point. But let's take a step back. The reason we know so much about the Ferengi is because of the show Star Trek Deep Space Nine. It's about a space station, and on that space station lives Quark, a Ferengi who owns a casino/bar in the space station. And he he lives on the space station with his brother, Rom, who works in the casino and has relatively small earlobes for a Ferengi, and Quark thinks he's not very good at business. He doesn't have the lobes for business, but he is actually very good at engineering. Now, Rom also has a child called Nog, and Nog is the first Ferengi to ever enter Starfleet Academy. So that's great. At some point, Rom and Quark discover that their mother, Ishka, has been wearing clothes. And even worse, she has been illegally earning profit. She was so good at earning profit that she became friends with Grand Nagus Zag. The boss or leader of all the Ferengi is called the Grand Nagus, and Zag is his name. So Grand Nagus Zag and Ishka were being friends, and Ishka had been advising Grand Nagus Zag because she was very smart at making profit, so she was actually helping Ferenginar make profit. At some point, Zag found out, and instead of punishing her, he surprisingly fell in love with her and they became a couple. Now, because of this, Ishka got a lot of influence on Ferenginar, and she managed to change a lot of things. She got women's rights, she even got them to take care of the environment more, and she banned monopolies, and she helped Ferenginar make more profit because of being more progressive with the rules. So that's great. Now back to Rom for a second. Rom married Lita. Lita was a Dabo girl who worked in the casino. Dabo is a game that you can play in the casino. Lita was not a Ferengi, and Rom was not controlling about her. So that was very weird for a Ferengi. That's actually kind of a disgrace. But Rom and Lita were happy together. You could say that Rom was more of a soy boy than an alpha male. It was a surprise to everyone that when Grand Nagus Zag retired, he appointed Rom as the next Grand Nagus of Ferenginar. So Rom became the boss of Ferenginar with Lita next to him, and actually she was kind of smarter than him when it came to making profit and everything. So she had a lot of influence as well. So the Ferengi actually chose, or Grand Nagus Zag, chose to continue the progressive approach to Ferengi politics because it was more profitable and better for everyone. So the alpha male society of the Ferengi turned out to not be so great. I would say that it would be far too competitive, far too lonely, and far too polarizing. It's also really egocentric, and in the end I just don't think that's sensible or great for anyone involved on a planet such as that. Actually, that is what the Ferengis kind of showed us. In conclusion, the Ferengi ideology and the alpha male ideology are very similar, and as we have seen, it was not great for the Ferengi, so it's probably not great for the humans either. And also, the Ferengi were a parody of something. You shouldn't desire to be a parody of something. So I don't think it's a great idea to be an alpha male. It's kind of ridiculous. There you have it. That was my conclusion. Thank you for watching. If you like my little video, please press the wonderful shiny like and subscribe buttons, and then I will see you next time. Ciao!